Make sure you have a tennis ball or 2 tennis balls, maybe a sock for today's practice, maybe also a kind of a sturdy, like insulated water bottle. And we'll be starting in just a moment. I have all the things going on my computer. Okay, so thanks everyone for being here. It's a little after 12 my time. I live in Washington, D.C. I'm coming to you from my humble home in Washington, D.C. And this practice is basically brought to you by Kira Grace. Actually, speaking of which, I want to start the Instagram live if I can. So let's see, Kira Grace, Instagram. Okay, so I'll start that in just a moment. I have like so many gadgets here, you guys, it's amazing. But today is really about dropping in to nurture ourselves and dropping in to nurture, you know, our entire community, our entire world as best as we are able. And every action counts. The link that you see in the chat is where I invite you to donate today in exchange for today's class. It's called Join Campaign Zero. And this is a nonprofit that has been dedicated to addressing police violence. They actually have an 8-step plan to do that. And if you've ever heard the word ahimsa, which is a Sanskrit word for nonviolence, or the opposite of violence, it is not just passively and peacefully in Shavasana. It's actually taking action. So I invite you to do that. Now, a little note, like where I am in the city, you might hear some sirens going by in the background. You might hear some helicopters flying over. We are, speaking of which, being heavily policed right now, in a sense. So I am going to ask Kira to spotlight my video. Just the way that this meeting was set up, you guys might individually have to spotlight my video or pin my video. And the way to do that is to hover over the 3 dots in the upper right-hand side of my little screen, and then click down and pin or spotlight video. I'm not the host, so I can't do that myself. But I'll ask Kira, or Kira, there's 2 Kiras here, to maybe help with that if possible. All right, we'll get started. Everybody has like a little myofascial release something. I don't exactly know where to put this because of the angle. So let me try to all right, it won't be the best angle here, but it will be something. All right, so we're started on Instagram too. And I think I might end up a little bit in shadow, so let me turn on a couple of lights. Thank you for your patience with the technical matters of making this all happen.
Ariele, it's Kira. While you're getting settled, can you tell everyone here a little bit about your background? I know you are a doctor, and I'd love people to understand your training and what you're bringing and your gift to us today is.
You coming, Lab?
We cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now? Yeah? Okay. So I started teaching yoga in the year 2001. And I studied Kripalu, I studied Anusara, I studied a bunch of different styles of yoga over well over 500 hours. And I went on to get my doctorate in physical therapy about 10 years ago. And so I run my own physical therapy practice here in DC. I've also worked in a lot of hospital settings, everywhere from stroke and spinal cord rehabilitation to ankle sprains. So I do a lot. And I also run Yoga Anatomy Academy, which is an online yoga anatomy mentorship. So I'll talk about all of that and what makes, you'll see a lot of what makes my teaching a little different. Today's class is not expected to, do not expect it to be a flow class or a quote unquote workout. It is a bit of somatics. It's a lot of like yoga therapy and physical therapy. And it's a lot about mobility in the highest sense. How can we gain appropriate range of motion and build into that and use it well. So for today's class,
Camper now based on enrollment. That's what I think's going on.
please a couple of mobility tools. And those mobility tools could be tennis balls, like these are 2 tennis balls that I'm holding up in a sock. I know it's a little tricky to see. You can have like a sturdy water bottle, this kind of insulated hydro flask type thing that's not going to bend. Or you could have more conventional myofascial release tools. So I have here a small foam roller variation made by Rad Roller, and I'll give the link. I think I have a coupon for them, so I'll give a link to that. And then these little conjoined balls here. So if you, like me, have a sturdy water bottle, I want you to put it inside a towel. This is just an old towel that I have. And you're gonna wrap the towel around the water bottle and secure it into place. So I'm securing mine into place with a bunch of rubber bands. But you can do this however you want. Duct tape works. Masking tape works. A little less intense there. You might still have a towel at the end of it if you use masking tape. Okay, so these are just ways to make makeshift home myofascial release things. And there's more that you can do, right? But we're gonna start today kind of coupling a little bit of yoga and myofascial release. This is also the basis of the course that I have with Yoga Journal called Fascia Release for Yoga. Very straightforward name. So let's take a moment to be still. Maybe bring one hand to your chest, one hand to your abdomen. Let's call ourselves right into this moment right now. And this moment right now includes all of the sensation that you are experiencing as an individual. It includes the swirl of uncomfortable changes that are happening in the world around us. It includes staying present with the pain of other people and acknowledging how that is the same and also how it is different from our own experiences of pain and loss and differentness. The very first line of Patanjali Sutras is Ato Yoga Nushasanam. Now is the time for yoga. And the key word in that phrase is now. 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 So what that means is, well, it means many, many things, but one of the layers of meaning could be that our yoga is not just what we practice on the mat. It is how we show up from the moment we open our eyes in the morning to the moment we close them again at night. How do we show up with true ahimsa, which is not just the absence of visible violence, but an action to counter that violence in the world. Inviting all of that to settle in for the next 3 breaths. Bring our palms together over the heart. Back of the neck long, jaw relaxed. Then on your inhale, stretch up through the arms, full length. Maybe take a little movement of your rib cage to the right and to the left. And then settle the arms right back by your side, the eyes open if you wish. And let's go ahead and get into a downward facing dog. I'm going to turn the light up a little bit more. So from downward facing dog, just notice whatever tightness, how close your heels get to the floor, anything that might feel tricky or challenging in this down dog. And obviously we haven't warmed up yet, so there's no expectation that this is going to look a certain way, or even if you have warmed up that it will look a certain way. So walk your feet up towards your hands. And then I invite you to grab your tennis ball or your myofascial release ball if you have one, and place it under one foot. Just pick a side, and we're going to stick with that side for a little bit until we have really retested our down dog and then gone to the other side. So you're going to bring the apex of the ball right in front of the heel pad of one foot. So I've chosen my right side. And again, you can choose any side to start with. This is a technique called draping. And so I'm literally just draping my body weight over this ball and breathing into it. One of the things to know when you practice myofascial release is that it's really not helpful to go into deep pain. It is helpful to think about like all of the ways in which all of the different sensations that can come up and whether those sensations feel tolerable and good to you. So come off of that spot that was right in front of the heel, but we're going to go to 2 other spots in the arch. So the second one is a little closer to the pinky toe side of the foot, and you just want to be right in the middle outer aspect of that arch and just place your body weight over it. What you should see is that the front of your foot starts to get a little bit broader. The metatarsals start to splay. And again, we're draping. If you want to do the tiniest little bit of rocking back and forth, you can. But you are mostly here to do just the draping, just noticing sensation. And the great thing is you get to back off if it's too much. And then this third spot is a little bit further inward. So you're between the middle and the second, or the first and the second bones, really close to the ball mound of the foot, but not quite there. So you're just gonna look down, see your foot splay, see the forefoot splay, drape, maybe make a little bit of adjustment. We've got about 3 more breaths here. Here's where we're going. Set that aside and just notice any difference in your downward facing dog. So already I feel a little bit different, nothing too crazy. And so as you sit down, we're gonna bring the water bottle contraption, insulated bottle contraption, under the calf. You can also do this with the tennis ball, but it's nice to have a little bit of leverage. So if you have like a yoga block that you can put under the tennis balls, that's good. Or if you just want to use your foam roller, you can do that, of course. If you'd like a little increased sensation, cross the ankle over, opposite ankle over, and just start to rock a little back and forth. Now in the calf, this takes a lot of the body weight, yeah? So if that's too much, then you can also just push down with the other leg and do a bit of cross friction. So turning your toes in and out, in and out. You can also assist the lift up action by setting your opposite leg on the ground, your opposite foot on the ground. And so we're really just starting nourishing one side of the body with all of these myofascial release techniques. I like to think about the calf in thirds. So I've done a pretty good job of getting to the upper third of the calf. Now I'm going to move into the middle. And I'm going to rock a little back and forth. So plowing through the tissue. I might turn my toes in and out a little, doing some of that cross friction action. I might really get to the inner calf because this is where I tend to need a little extra tender loving care, TLC. And of course you can get close to the Achilles. My water bottle contraption is definitely lumpier than my foam roller. And that's okay, that's fun. All right, so setting that aside, return to your downward facing dog. We've now done the sole of the foot for about 1.5 minutes and the calf for maybe 2 minutes. And immediately my heel comes down to the floor on that side. So that's really potent. We're gonna keep working on that side further up the leg. So if you have a foam roller, I would suggest using your foam roller in the upper part of the back of the thigh, but again, you already have your makeshift version. So same thing to your hamstrings. Rolling back and forth. And just to give a little shout out in case you didn't quite have any of that set up, you can also use the corner of a yoga block or just like a plain hydro flask thermos type thing. So with the corner of the yoga block, you pretty much rock side to side, a little bit of leaning forward and back, but it's a lot of rocking. With the foam roller, you have a little bit more capacity to roll, to plow, to do those sorts of things. All right.
Make sure you get both the outer aspect of the hamstrings as well as the inner aspect of the hamstrings, just kind of rolling back and forth here. And I'm actually going a little bit fast, so I have to check myself to slow down sometimes. If you want more sensation, you can always cross one leg over. And as you are ready, set that off to the side, and then go ahead and recheck your downward facing dog. And just notice if anything has changed for you. So we're gonna do that same sequence on the other side. And to be honest, we're actually going through it a little bit quickly right now. I feel that we could spend so much positions on each of these body parts. So don't worry if you don't notice a huge difference. These techniques are things you can absolutely borrow well beyond our time together here. When you're ready, stand up and let's go to the second side. So grab your tennis balls, place the apex of one ball right under the arch of one foot. We're on our second side now, and we'll be here for about 30 seconds. Symbolically, the actions that we're taking in our legs, we're starting off from a place of grounding, from a place of really wanting to get right at the root of the issue. So we're here maybe doing a little bit of oscillating, definitely draping the body. And we have just a couple more breaths in this first spot. All three spots that we're getting into in the foot are in the arch of the foot. All three spots are being held for at least 30 seconds. The second spot, still in the arch of the foot, is to the outer aspect, kind of between the fourth and the fifth metatarsals, which is to say on the pinky toe side, almost like you're trying to spread your foot out like it were melting. True story, the natural shape of our feet should be more like a triangle with the toes as the widest part, but because of shoes, our toes end up pointing inward. So take another breath or two here. I always want to jump over this spot because I don't feel a whole lot of sensation happening, but you can play with moving a little up, down, left, right, and find the best spot for you. And then finally, our third spot is between the second, third, or the first and second metatarsals, very close to the ball mound of the foot. And so you're getting this really lovely splay at the front of the foot. Hopefully now the front of your foot looks wider, as it should, all of the time. We've got one or two more breaths here. So that 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds. It's a really simple but nourishing and grounding fascia release. Little like tricks and tips. And I have patients and clients who keep tennis balls in their bathroom so they can do this while they brush their teeth every day. Our feet should be able to adapt and have that kind of mobility in them. But we're going to do something different on this side. Now that we've done both sides, you might get yourself in a position where you can hold on to something. And now that we've lengthened the bottom of the feet a little bit, let's try lifting the top of the feet up about 10 times. So in doing so, we're activating the muscles at the front of the shins. We're activating the muscles, the levers that draw our toes up. So the opposite of of coming onto your tiptoes, right? The opposite of heels not coming to the ground. We're aiming to drive the heels into the ground. And maybe this will be our last repetition of this. This is a technique called, building off of reciprocal inhibition. So the idea that when we activate one side, the other side is going to be relaxed. So when we activate the front of the calves, the shins, the calves themselves get a chance to neurologically relax. So now we're using the tennis ball duo, the foam roller, or your water bottle for the calf. Just go ahead and roll a little bit front to back. Do a little cross friction side to side, turning your toes in and out. And slowly start to move your way up the calf or down. Think of the calf in 3 parts, these thirds. So you're getting the bottom third, the middle third, the upper third. And what you want is you want to make sure, again, that you're not just chasing pain, but you're experimenting with the different types of sensation. So I call it being like a sensation sommelier rather than a sensation junkie. I'm not sure, in real life, how much of a difference there is. There's probably a fine line, but the idea is that we're looking for that nuance. We're looking for all the little notes of brightness and chocolate and raspberry. And turn your toes in and out a little to get some cross friction. Don't forget the inner aspect of the calf, which is so, so vital. I call this particular class today fascia release and fluidity, because it's not a whole lot. It doesn't do us a whole lot of good just to release if we don't also glue it into our bodies in movement, with movement. And so the idea is to build off of our fascia release by moving as fluidly as we can. Speaking of which, now that we've done probably all 3 levels of the feet or the calf, all 3 thirds of the calf, let's go ahead and go back to the toes up, rocking back onto the heels that we did before. Again, hold on to something if you need to. And it doesn't have to look like much, but I invite you to notice if one side feels different from the other. So really lifting your toes up. And then let's take a downward facing dog and check in on that, even though we still have the hamstrings to do on the second side. And compared to the first down dog, my heels are touching the floor versus they were not touching the floor in the first one. My arms feel stronger, which is probably not actually the case, but they are, they're probably taking on less weight and in an improved way. So last little thing on the left, we're going to get into the hamstrings on the left. So let's go ahead and pick your technique, your tool here. I'm going to grab this foam roller again. And a couple of words about foam rolling, fascia release. When you go into REI, even Target, even like pretty much any store that has a sports section these days, you're going to see a lot of myofascial release products. Many of them will have spikes and complicated structures. And honestly, I don't think you need any of that. And particularly with the spikes and the nubs, I think they can be a little jarring to our nervous systems. What the research doesn't show is that doing this, myofascial release alone, foam rolling alone, makes much difference in performance or capacity or long-term change at all, like as far as the myofascial release studies go. What does make a difference, what we do think is happening with myofascial release and why it's still useful to practice and to know, is that it has a profound impact on our nervous systems. And that impact on our nervous systems is all about like being able to calm down, to close, to stop those repetitive signals of tightening in a muscle that really allow it to kind of come into a more relaxed, less tonic state. Okay, so that was a lot of word jumble right there. But what I mean is that it's our nervous system that is keeping a muscle absurdly tight. Make sense? Like at the end of the day, that muscle is not voluntarily on its own having a temper tantrum. And so when you do myofascial release, if we think we're working on the muscle, we can still think that. But the reality is that we're working in that communication with the brain. So I can get fired up about this. I don't always have the most articulate words, but I can say a lot more about that when I'm not also trying to teach the techniques. So rock and roll back and forth here. Make sure you get to the inner hamstring as I was kind of starting with, and the outer hamstring. And again, there's almost no wrong way to do this unless you go too quickly, right? So again, it's about not jarring the nervous system, giving the nervous system the information that it's time to calm down. Okay, before we do down dog, we're going to do a reciprocal inhibition for our hamstrings. And so what that's going to look like is you can just park whatever you have, even a balled up sweatshirt or a pillow, underneath your legs and lift your heels off the floor. So I've got this foam roller right under my thighs, close to my knees. This is activating the quads. Just for bonus points, I'm curling the toes up towards the eyes as well. So helping to turn on the muscles at the front of the legs and turn off the muscles or turn them down, dilate down at the back of the legs. You don't want to turn the muscles off. And then we've got, because the hamstrings and down dog in particular, like it involves crossing the hip, right? The hip joint is involved in down dog. So we're gonna lay on our backs here. And the contract relax for the hip joint is just to kick one leg up and then the other. So allow this to be free. For this one, maybe, especially if you feel any tightness or if you have any old hamstring injury, don't curl your toes up towards your eyes. Just keep the leg, the toes pointed, the leg a little bit softer. Just the action of lifting and lowering should be helpful for this. You'll notice that the only conventional yoga pose we've done so far is Adho Mukha Svanasana. It's downward facing dog. And so when you're ready, if you want a fun way to get up, you can experiment with this one. Cross at your ankles, lean forward, settle your feet, rise up. These are things I hope to do for a long part of my lifespan, my health span. And then settle your hands to the floor and notice any difference in your downward facing dog. I feel so much more solid, so much more prepared here in down dog than I did before. Exhale, settle your knees down to the ground, but keep your toes curled under. Spread out your toes. You can look between your knees or around your side of your body and try to spread your toes here. Use your sticky mat if you've got one, or your carpet if you're using that. Walk your hands a little in front of your shoulders. Spread your fingers wide, and then this is a good tip for the upper body. Turn your fingers outward. Root down, rise up. And just bend one knee and the other. Maybe also rise and lower a little bit. So we're engaging the calf muscle through the fullest range, teaching it that we want this new range of motion to glue in, to be stable here. And then walk your feet towards your hands. Go ahead and rise up. Hold on to something as needed. And rise onto your tiptoes and lower. Rise onto your tiptoes, engaging the calves. Keep them nice and high, long as you can. And lower. And just about 2 to 3 more of those. Last one. Good. All right. A little bit more for the hips, the hamstrings, just so that we get that grounded quality. And then I want to get into the upper traps and the arms today. I think that many of us are spending more time than ever on our devices, and the techniques for the upper body are really, really vital as well. So the neck, shoulder area. I promise you we'll get there. Go ahead and stand on one leg, lift the other, and then just do a couple of circles here. So again, activation of the front hip to help release the back of the hip. Lower that leg down, stand on the other leg, and do a couple of circles, maybe hitting both directions if you haven't already. And then lower down. Last little bit here, toes curl up, drop back. So you're activating quads on one leg, actually on both legs. Drop back like you're, I don't know, there's some kind of athletic maneuver where you do this, right? And then switch sides and drop. And switch sides, one leg forward, other leg goes into a squat. One leg forward, other leg goes into a squat. So it's a little bit of a rowing technique with your upper body, activating, working with that new range of motion. And then go ahead and settle down to the ground. So I mentioned a moment ago when we got up in that funky way from being on our backs about the importance of standing up without our hands. It's also important to be able to lower down without your hands. So if you can do what I just did, go for it. If you need just one hand on a piece of furniture, a chair, or down to the ground to lower down, totally fine. But a worthy practice to incorporate into whatever your movement practice is, if it's yoga, etc., etc. We're gonna grab the 2 tennis balls in the sock. 1 tennis ball in a sock will be fine, by the way, if that's all you have, or your myofascial release product, if that's what you got. So go ahead and settle that down to the floor and lower your body down, vertebra by vertebra. You're going to, I'm actually going to change sides here. You're going to settle the ball device that you have right in the place between your neck and your shoulder. So it's a bit meaty there. This is your upper trapezius area. And what you can do once you have it here is, first of all, just take a couple of breaths. Take breaths into your upper chest, across your upper back. And then after you've kind of settled into that sensation, with the same side arm, you can start to draw some circles. I cannot emphasize enough that you don't just want to dig in like to eternity here. Pause when you start to feel a heightened sensation. Just take another couple of breaths. Move the arm gently. If you can tolerate bigger movements, Go ahead and move the arm up by your ear and down. Feel free to adjust the tennis ball or the myofascial release balls that you're using. And then we're gonna move the ball slightly. So the ball is gonna move to, and I'm gonna sit up so you guys can see. It's gonna move to this little spot on the shoulder blade. So when I pat my shoulder, pat my opposite shoulder, I can feel a bony ridge that goes side to side. And I'm gonna go right below it, and there's just a little tiny bit of meat on the shoulder blade itself. That is your infraspinatus. It's one of the rotator cuff muscles, and it's worthy of spending a little time there. We're gonna do these two spots on this side, or the second spot on this side, the first and the second spot on the second side, and then I promise you we'll get into the neck. So the apex of the ball has to go just underneath, just below, closer to your hips, that little side to side ridge. And once you've got the arms settled down, elbow to the ground, start to tick-tock that arm back and forth. The ball is right on the shoulder blade. Move it around a little bit as needed. Elbow out to the side, arm is going to internal rotation and external rotation. This muscle is a muscle of external rotation. Good. Awesome. All right, so now that you have done that side, we're gonna take the ball duo and snuggle it into where the neck and the shoulder meet on the other side. And so once you pick your first spot, just start to move your arm around, let the breath be easy and full, and allow the breath to be all the way into the chest. One of the misconceptions that I hear a lot in the yoga world is that there's something that is automatically better about only belly breathing. And that's not entirely true. We need the muscles of our chest, our upper chest, our rib cage to be doing their dynamic dance of inhale and exhale, expansion and contraction throughout the day, all the time, so that that part of our body can stay fluid, so that that part of our body can stay engaged and absorb any kind of forces, whether it's from walking or running or carrying a bag or actually, absorbing the impact of a fall. We need our rib cage to be more fluid than we think it is. You can also shrug here, just pulling your shoulder to your ear and down. Connecting breath all the way into the upper part of the chest. And then let's go ahead and find that second spot. I'm gonna come on up so you guys can see it again. It's again, right at the back of the shoulder, you find a horizontal bony ridge. So it's not at the top, just over the shoulder at the back. Find that little ridge, drop down a couple of inches at the most, and feel the kind of meaty area there. That's where the apex of the ball is going to be, is on that kind of meaty area. And so as you lay down, you'll snuggle it in and start to move the arm. For this one, you really will benefit from keeping the elbow down to the ground and then internally and externally rotating the arm. If you get a whole lot of sensation here, move the ball a little up, down, left or right, just by even a quarter of an inch, a centimeter can make a huge difference. Working your way around anywhere on the shoulder blade is actually perfectly fine. And then after we do this myofascial release, we need to also learn how to use this new range of motion if indeed we do have improved range of motion. So I'll teach you that in a moment. But finally, grab your tennis ball, your duo, whatever you got. And this time we're gonna slide it right under the neck. You can go pretty centrally on the neck, but what you don't want to do is put a lot of force through the bones, right? So the great thing about the little duo that I'm using here, this sort of two conjoined balls situation, it cradles the muscles on either side of the neck or the spine. I don't use it on my back very often because it's a little too forceful still for the rib cage, at least for me, for my body, and it's a little more than I would want to drape my body over for my low back. But I absolutely use it at the wall all the time for wherever I feel achy, including my back, because that way I don't have as much pressure through it. So one ball, you can spend a little time at the base of the skull, turning your head a little right and left. And we'll come back to this for our Shavasana, and you can go down a little bit. Again, I recommend just turning a little right and left, noticing any differences from one side to the other. And then because I have this duo, I'm going to go to the very base of my neck, and I'm going to move both arms at once. Another really interesting thing is that I would say more than half of people don't have full 180-degree range of motion into shoulder flexion, which is arm by the ear. And this is really required of downward facing dog. So the way that we can start to use that muscle action and improve our range of motion in addition to myofascial release is this really great technique that engages our muscles right at the end range. So whatever objects you have, place those out in front of you. So I've got my little, I'm gonna go ahead and use my little water bottle contraption here. And you're going to rock back into a child's pose. Now I know child's pose is not the most comfortable thing for everybody. So you can also do this just flat on your belly. Child's pose makes it a little bit more challenging, which is, so if it's too much for your shoulder, then go ahead and just come onto your belly for this. Before we get into the position, I want to say one thing about shoulder movement. Whenever your arm is overhead, if this is your shoulder blade, you don't want to keep it glued in place. You don't want to keep your shoulder blade down and back when your arm is higher than shoulder height. The role of the shoulder blade anatomically and in biomechanically is to start to upwardly rotate, right? So there is this myth that if we use these muscles, our upper traps, that we're, by allowing the shoulder blade to upwardly rotate, that we're going to be tightening our neck. But that's actually not true because we use other muscles in our body all the time in yoga asana, and those muscles don't chronically tighten, right? So what chronically tightens is when we are using things sort of maladaptively. So when you allow your shoulder blade to move, so actually kind of elevate it, scrunch it up towards your ear, and then reach your arm, you actually have more mobility automatically than if you're pulling your shoulder blade down. So that's a tip. That's tip number one. Now, coming into that child's pose position or belly down position, rest your forehead on one hand, and then have your water bottle, whatever it is, object, it can be small, it can be large, out in front of you. I do this with a yoga block very often. And keeping your elbows straight, start to chop the floor on the inside and the outside of that water bottle. So again, if this range of motion feels really pinching to your shoulder, just come all the way down onto your belly, and it will be a little bit easier to go up and over. So we're working through, in a muscular way, the very end range of what our arm can do here. Just up and over, initiating all the movement from around the shoulder and the shoulder blade, the shoulder girdle. Getting a little fatigued? Good. Reach the arm, make it extra, extra long, and then we'll take it to the other side. So forehead rests. Second side, you're gonna reach the arm long. Keep that elbow straight, like it's in a cast. And then moving from the shoulder blade, from the shoulder girdle, allow the arm to completely clear whatever object is in its path. You can chop to the inside and the outside of that arm. So we've built up the movement through fascia release, hopefully. And now we're actually gluing it into our bodies through using it. That was enough for me. Hopefully that was enough for you guys. So press up if you got out of child's pose. Let's come back to the child's pose we were in before. Knees a little bit apart, toes splay. Rest back on your heels, toes are curled under. And so there's this strong pushing action through the arms. Reach the hips high, thighs back, hips to the sky. Check in with your downward facing dog. I feel more solid than I've felt all day in down dog in this moment. And I don't want to assume that you feel the same, but the techniques that we use, from strengthening the front of the quads, strengthening around the shoulder blades, releasing that which is not needing to be so tight, so powerful. Shake out your head. Nod it up and down. And then settle down into the ground. So give yourself something comfortable to sit on. Even after 20 years, 19 years of teaching yoga, I still prefer to sit on something, whether I'm meditating, opening a class, or closing a class for my own private personal experience. We'll go through the 6 movements of the spine. Technically, there's a 7th and an 8th, which is lengthening and compressing, but they're a lot more subtle. Inhale, arms up. Exhale, spin to one side. Look over that back shoulder and just shake your head out a little. Maybe do some Stevie Wonders here, as I call them. Connect to breath and start to allow your eyelids to get heavy. Inhale, neutral. Other side. Gentle movements. Stay in the center of your sitting bones. Notice the movement of the ribs and the shoulder blades. Inhale, center. Side bend to one side. Big breath into the top ribs. Head heavy. Allow the arm to reach. Create length in the side body. Inhale, rise. Other side. Allow your head to be heavy. Breathing into these top ribs. Reaching through the arm. Inhale up. And then a little cat and cow. I'm going to move my block out from underneath, rounding back. Inhale forward. Letting the eyes close 3/4 of the way. Before your next rounding back, settle your feet to the floor. Grab your tennis ball if you have one, or two ideally. Lower yourself down and settle that little ball into place. As we let our minds soften down and get heavy, you can just take a few final little rocks to massage, to oscillate the back of the neck, close to the skull, your suboccipitals, close to the base of the neck, the levator scap, upper trapezius. Wherever you are, let your breath be easy and full. And if you're finding any discomfort in this position, move the balls out of the way. You might move your hands to your abdomen, or bring one hand to your upper chest, or even allow the hands to just rest by your side. Knees can be bent or legs straight. Get quiet. Or listen. For anyone who wants to stay in Shavasana, you're welcome to stay. You're ready to start to wiggle and move. Keep your eyes closed and keep your attention honed in on your inner experience. Maybe wiggling at the feet or the ankles or the wrists, the fingers. Inviting those wiggles to get a little bigger and a little bigger. And truly taking whatever amount of time you need, draw your knees towards your chest. Rock a little side to side. And we're gonna rock completely to whatever side would feel good, keeping your eyelids closed. Rise up to a seated position, grabbing whatever you need for comfort. In this moment, we are safe. In this moment, we are connected. In this moment, we are grounded. The practice of yoga is a practice. And practice is the key word. We can practice cultivating this groundedness, this presence, this quietness and willingness to listen with our loved ones, with our community, with the entire world. And as we prepare to leave the yoga mat, that's literally our task. to act, to listen, to show up, to be present fully in the now. If it feels good to you, you can bring your palms together over your heart like this, Anjali Mudra. You can put one hand over your heart center and one hand over your belly, allowing yourself to just stay inward and grounded. We'll collectively take a full breath in. Full release, maybe even letting it out with a sigh. And we bow our heads to our greatest potential as individuals and as groups, as collectives, as society. May we live into our highest ideals in every moment, in every action. Thank you for being here. Namaste. So I'm going to look like a ghost for a moment, like I'm telling ghost stories for a moment. And I'm going to unmute you guys, or allow you the opportunity rather to unmute yourself, answer any questions, and tell you a couple more things. The big thing is that if you have the capacity to donate to join Campaign Zero, this is the greatest action we can take towards ahimsa, active nonviolence today. And I really ask you to do that, and I appreciate you. If you have any questions, I would love for you to post in the comments in the chat, and also to unmute yourselves in just a moment. I won't be able to hear you for about 5 more seconds. So let me come in and do that. And I also have some resources I can share with you so you can stay in touch with me if you'd like. So, perfectly.
Hopefully you didn't hear that. All right, thanks you guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks Amanda and Amy and Isabel and Liesel and Kimberly. You guys, I'm gonna paste a couple of resources. If I can find that thing again, here we go. So these are the ways you can contact me and stay in touch with me. And I highly recommend signing up for my Yoga Anatomy Academy newsletter. I send out a lot of free things on there. And of course, there will be paid things, including a fascia release class that's coming up. Oops, I sent it just to Amy by accident. Let me send it to everyone. There we go. And also, I'm going to add the link again. I need to find it for Join Campaign Zero. They have this program called 8 Can't Wait, and look into that. It's very, very powerful platform for reducing the tensions and the practices that lead to police violence. Thank you, Kira. Thanks for hosting. This is just so kind of Kira Grace to host. And I want to give a shout out also to Rad Roller Products. These guys are amazing. They have, they make like the best myofascial release things I've ever known. And so I always recommend them. This link and the code, I think Ariele Foster 15 gives you 15% off Rad Roller. And mine have lasted since 2013 when I bought them.
This class was wonderful, Ariele. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I mean, I could like do this for hours with you. I hope you'll come do this again with us.
I would love that. Thank you.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you so much. Kira Grace, you're just a great human. Oh, Kira, you're a great human, and Kira Grace, you're a great small business company, relatively small, woman-owned, USA made. I know this has not been an easy time for you guys, and or for many of us as well. And so just thank you for showing up and offering some kindness to yourselves these days.
Thank you.
All right, a lot of you are still on here. I just open it up to questions if you have any. Hi, Janet. Bye. Bye, Hanandi. All right, it's a quiet Saturday, so if you don't have any questions, I get it. Bye, Laurel.
It was just wonderful sharing space with everyone.
Yeah,
Thank you for creating the space, Ariel.
thank you so much
I'm
for.
gonna sign off, but mwah to everyone.
Wow.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Bye, Kimberly. Thank you for being here.
I have a question.
Go for it.
So I followed you for a bit, and I know you speak a lot to hypermobility. And can you describe kind of in a nutshell why this kind of myofascial work is beneficial for those with hypermobility?
Would you say you have hypermobility?
I don't, but it's a community that I work with, and I want to work with much deeper.
Yeah.
Because I have family members who have, and it's something very personal to me, and I want to help. I want to contribute.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, well, I will tell you that when someone has like a genetic makeup where the fabric of their body is a little bit looser, the best analogy I have is to imagine like a doorknob that's loose. You know what I mean? So it's constantly rattling. And if you have that in your joints, because your ligaments are not as tightly wound as others, and there's a spectrum, right? Sort of like the spring loose knit sweater versus the Irish dense cable knit sweater. If you've got the spring loose knit sweater type of joint structure, or rather ligamentous soft tissue, connective tissue structure, you're going to feel a little bit rattly. And what that does is it makes your muscles kind of fire more often. And then your muscles can feel really, really tight when you have hypermobility. So this is what's happening when you go to a yoga class. You guys, have you ever been to a yoga class and somebody's just like, they're just like doing something like that and they're like, oh my God, I feel so tight, right? And you're like, who are you? you're kissing your shin. Well, the reason why they feel tight isn't because they are objectively tight, but because those muscles are firing to try and create stability on a chronic kind of 24/7 level, hopefully not when they're asleep. And so that is why someone might feel tight. But if you take that tightness and then you stretch it to the end range of someone's hypermobility, you're actually much more likely to get bone on bone compression, which you might not even be aware of that for years and years, but your body's really smart and your body's like, oh, you're going to put pressure here on the edge of the joint where it's almost not supposed to be touching. Well, we'll just put more bone down there to protect it. And then you can get all sorts of impingement, like hip impingement, shoulder impingement, all sorts of things that can come from that. The research on stretching right now just doesn't look that good, unfortunately. And this is something that's probably taken me like 8 years to move through my dense skull. Like it is so difficult to come from the paradigm of thinking that just stretching and releasing and moving into the end range and flexibility. It's difficult to go from that paradigm of that being our optimal state to realizing that like, oh, maybe we should be thinking about active range of motion more. And so what we did with our shoulder today was end range. It was probably a stretch for many of you guys, but going up and over that block used the muscles rather than use the passive connective tissue structure. So hopefully I answered your question. A lot to say around that. And I think that I'm going to speak even to a bigger population, the population of people who have some kind of chronic pain, whether it's in our pinky finger or all over our body. If you've got chronic pain, there's a really powerful, just learning ways that you can move that are not exacerbating your pain, maybe not making it better, but certainly not making it worse. Really, really, really important. So I do think myofascial release plays a big role in those two populations.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. I got a couple other questions in the chat, which one was an option for glutes. A myofascial release option? I think so, but I think that person may no longer be on the chat. For glutes, you just get it in there, roll around. A close-up of the shoulder points, yes. So this is the kind of bony line on the shoulder blade. It's called the spine of the shoulder blade, even though it's horizontal. And it's just below that your infraspinatus lays. So if you can get the tennis ball there, great. If you can get it more towards the armpit, also great. You might get your lats, you might get your subscapularis, you might get other muscles in that area, teres minor, teres major. So yeah, lots of good things on the shoulder. Hopefully that was helpful. And then the other one was up here, just this little area that everybody chronically wants massaged. All right, everyone, I'm gonna probably head downtown this afternoon to the White House, try to keep this state of peace and show up on the streets. And thank you all for showing up and taking the action of being here today. Please stay in touch. I posted joincampaignzero.org for the donations. And my main site where you can stay in touch with me is yoganatomyacademy.com. I've just put it in the notes. I'll add it hopefully with a hyperlink now. Academy, lots of words. There we go, there's the hyperlink. All right, Kira, anything else to say?
No, have a wonderful day. And thank you. And Ariele, I hope you'll do this again with us.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so thrilled to be invited. Thank you, everyone. Take care, you guys. I'll see you soon. Oh, and you can see a close-up on the Instagram live. It should be up for 24 hours. It was much closer to me where that was positioned. Bye, everyone. Stay in touch. Take care.